So imagine this. The Supreme Court strikes down a president's key trade policy. You'd think that's game over, right? Well, not so fast. The White House is basically saying they have a plan B, a legal workaround that would let them keep their tariff strategy going no matter what the court decides. So how on earth is that even possible? Let's break it down. And this is the claim, and it is a huge one, from Scott Bessent, a potential Treasury Secretary. He's saying, look, we can just recreate the exact same tariff structure using these other laws. He's not just hinting at a backup plan, he's asserting they can rebuild the whole thing, which would pretty much make a Supreme Court ruling irrelevant. I mean, that is a massive statement about executive power. Right? And that's the big question we're digging into. How can an administration just openly talk about sidestepping a potential Supreme Court decision? Well, the answer seems to be buried in the fine print of some really old laws, and it tells us a whole lot about the true scope of presidential power. Okay, so to really get this Plan B, we first need to understand Plan A, and more importantly, why it's in trouble. The whole reason they need a Plan B is because their current strategy is facing a pretty major legal hurdle, forcing them to think a few steps ahead. At the very heart of this legal fight is a law called the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA for short. Now, it's designed to give the president some really vast control over commerce, but it's supposed to be for a national emergency. The thing is, the current White House has been using this as its main tool for implementing broad tariffs. And that's the whole issue. The Supreme Court is basically looking at this and asking, wait a minute, is using an emergency act for broad tariffs a valid use of this power? A ruling against the administration could take this major tool right out of their hands.
Now, publicly, the administration is projecting total confidence. You've got Secretary Bessent saying he thinks they'll win the case. But, the very existence of this detailed backup plan shows they are absolutely preparing for any outcome, win or lose.
So, let's move over to that backup plan. Think of it like a legal toolbox. The Supreme Court might take away one of their favorite wrenches, that EPA law, but the Treasury Secretary is saying, no big deal, we've got plenty of other tools in here we can use. So where are these backup powers coming from? Not some brand new law. Nope, they're pulling from a law that's been on the books for over 60 years, the Trade Expansion Act of 1962. Yeah, 1962. They're planning to dust off some old tools that just haven't been used this way for a very long time. This table here breaks down the three key tools in that Plan B. First, you've got Section 122, which is kind of like a temporary fix for trade imbalances. Then there's Section 232, a much more powerful tool that allows tariffs for national security reasons, which is a pretty broad term. And finally, Section 301 is designed to fight back against what they see as unfair trade practices. So, three different legal paths to get to the exact same goal. This all raises a really critical question. If the administration does have to switch to these older laws, can they keep the tariffs in place for the long haul? Or are we just talking about temporary fixes here? And here's the crucial difference. That Section 122, it's clearly a short-term tool, limited to just 150 days. But when you look at Sections 301 and 232, while the law is a lot more ambiguous about time limits, there's no definitive end date specified. And that ambiguity is exactly what the administration would use to argue for keeping tariffs in place indefinitely. And that brings us right back to this moment from the Deal Book Summit, when Bessent was asked point-blank if these alternative measures could be implemented for good. He didn't even hesitate. His answer was just one emphatic word: permanently. So, we've been in the legal weeds for a bit. Let's zoom out. What does all this maneuvering actually mean for U.S. trade policy and its relationship with other countries? Let's look at the big picture. This really gets to the heart of the administration's whole philosophy on trade. They see tariffs as more than just a tax. They see them as a primary weapon for negotiation, especially against countries like China. The goal seems to be to create a tariff system that's not only powerful but also legally bulletproof, one that can survive pretty much any court challenge. And to argue that this aggressive tariff strategy actually works, the administration points to a very specific example, what they're calling the fentanyl tariffs that were imposed on China. According to Secretary Bessent, after those tariffs went into place, China made a robust effort to stop the flow of fentanyl into the United States. So the administration frames this as a direct cause and effect victory, proof that their tariff pressure gets real results. So the ultimate takeaway here is this. It almost doesn't matter how the Supreme Court rules on any single law. The administration's position is crystal clear. They believe the president has a deep and varied set of powers to control trade, and they are fully prepared to use every single one of them. And this leaves us with one final and really important question to think about. If a president can draw on decades-old laws to create a powerful tariff regime that seems almost immune to challenges, what does that signal to our trading partners? And how does it change the very nature of global trade for years to come?